Like, On Cailín Ciúin isn't a movie about being Irish. It's in the Irish language, and there are definite elements of growing up, and it'll give you kind of warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feelings of growing up in Ireland, and of going on trips down the country to visit family like she does. But it's essentially a story of a neglected girl of a certain vintage who goes to visit family and gets the care she kind of deserves. And it's a beautiful story that isn't about being Irish. But I think international cinema seems to love us when we're, you know, we're making movies about the Irish condition, so to speak. The old diddly eye, let's have some pints, boys, and that. Sure, I better milk the cows and all that kind of stuff. The traditional, almost borderline offensive stuff. And again, I'm not going to turn around and say that Banshees is a bad movie. A lot of people are coming out and kind of criticizing it. And I think part of that backlash comes with the fact that it's being overrated here. Let's call a spade a spade. Like, I'd say it's a fun Sunday afternoon movie that left nothing to the imagination. But if we're like, that's because, again, I didn't see it as trying to be more than it was. But if we're going to say that it's the best picture, if we're going to like try and judge it through that lens, then I think we need to revise that review. We need to kind of judge it a bit harsher, and let's look at the reality of it. It's a movie where nothing really happens compared to the absolute transcendent Cailín Ciúin. Like, it's a movie where characters at certain times will look across the water and see the Irish Civil War happening. They're like, geez, I wonder what's happening over there. And if in your movie, your characters and the story points to something more interesting happening across the water, then do you think for a fucking second that the thing that's happening across the water might be the thing that we're watching in the movie instead of this incredibly small time pile of nothingness that's going on in front of us? Like, and there's a part of it where there's an article that I read during the week written by Mark O'Connell for Slate, and it nails Martin McDonagh, who, again, I think gets a pass for a lot of what he writes, because a lot of the stories are about Irishness and being Irish, and starred the likes of Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell and so on. Like, he wrote In Bruges and stuff like that as well. But Martin McDonagh, I think he gets a pass for being able to say and do a lot of things because his name is Martin McDonagh, and we assume a lot with that name. Martin McDonagh's not Irish. He doesn't claim to be Irish. I appreciate how he has the name McDonagh, and he like writes about Irish, and I appreciate how that would be confusing as to how that person would not be Irish, but he's not. He was born and raised in London. He did have Irish family that he visited in the west of Ireland, and that kind of inspired a lot of his work. But I think what the article summed up really, really well, and I have retweeted it on the Page 180 Twitter, so if you want to have a look at Page 180 Pod, there's a thing where, like, a lot of his characters, when you look at it, are paddies. And that's what Banshees is about. Like, you have Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson fighting and unable to like verbalize or vocalize why they're fighting or what's going on or what's actually causing this rift that's developing in their friendship. You have them unable to kind of express themselves or unable to, and that's played for laughs because Jesus, look how stupid the Irish were in the 20s. Brendan Gleeson reacting to the situation by like, and again, I don't want to give too much away, but a lot of people will have seen this movie by now, cutting parts of his body off instead of just actually communicating like a normal human. You have Barry Keoghan, who, again, I think is vastly overrated in this movie. I think if you look at this movie, I wasn't a fan of Barry Keoghan in that. There's a lot of videos going around. Look at him acting. Look at what he's doing. And I admit he is doing a lot of different things, but kind of good acting is really more about like a character or an actor who is using, facial expressions, intonation in his language, making dramatic choices that gives you insight into what his character is thinking, feeling, planning, and kind of allows you to kind of follow the plot or get a deeper understanding of that. And while it's certainly clear that Barry Keoghan is doing a lot of things and making a lot of gestures, it's never clear what his character wants, what their motivation is, how they're feeling, what is causing that. Again, he's just doing a lot of things. He's just being a bit of a weirdo. And I don't mean the character. I mean, Barry Keoghan is being a bit of a weirdo in this movie, and just playing a simpleton. And again, the one person who seems to have their shit together, Colin Farrell's character's sister in the movie, is just leaving. And that's kind of the condition that's true in a lot of McDonough projects, where it's like, if you have any sense, you're getting the fuck out of here. And it's a bit offensive when you kind of see it through that lens. And I think I love this piece from the article that Mark O'Connell wrote, and he goes, it's a characteristic of McDonough in general. For all its reputation for darkness and perversity, his work is expertly crafted light entertainment, passing itself off sometimes almost convincingly as provocative, serious art. And that's the point. It's not art. He literally, the only point he's making here is Irish are simpletons, and we're kind of lapping it up, and we're kind of patting ourselves on the back when actually we do have an amazing film in on Cailín. And like, the thing that's annoying me here is I wouldn't have minded if On Cailín hadn't got nominated for anything, because at that stage I would have been able to be like, oh well, the Academy probably just didn't see it. But the fact that they did, and they still thought Banshees of Inisherin was the better movie, like, what are you doing? There's no question if you watch the two together. The only thing you have is that we're speaking in our own language, and we're not being paddies, we're not being fucking Egypts, and that's the only difference between the two. On Cailín is clearly a better movie. And so you may be wondering, like, with these strong feelings that I've fueled and poured petrol on and indulged in for this year, because I have a podcast and it allows me to do so, you may be wondering, am I still going to watch the Oscars, or am I going to boycott it, or am I just going to leave it and just kind of get on with things and just kind of go, I don't need their validation for what I think the best movies are? And the question, if you're asking, is, am I going to watch it? The answer is, I mean, of course I'm going to watch it. Yeah, obviously. Look at what I do. Look at what I'm interested in. Yes, I'm going to watch it. And like, come on. Of course, you're probably going to watch it, or at least pay attention to. Will Smith slapped a guy on TV last year. A few years ago, they got the best picture wrong. And let's put this into context as well. Like, this was the year after Oscars So White, when they're trying to prove themselves. Oh, we couldn't be racially biased. No, us. And literally on the stage then, when a movie about Black culture in that year, when the Oscars are trying to prove as much and actually have voted it as the best picture, instead, what gets called out is La La Land, a movie about a bunch of white people portraying about how great Hollywood is. And the only reason you can actually ascribe to that is Warren Beatty just had the biggest Freudian slip ever. And he just was like, well, we're obviously not going to give it to the black movie. We're going to give it to the movie with the white lads talking about how great Hollywood is, because that's always what we do. And they called it out on stage, on live TV. Even a few years ago, and this is not as funny, but it is still like a hot mess. Chadwick Boseman, they flew out his family, presuming that he would get a Best Picture nod, and instead they gave the picture to Anthony Hopkins, who got yet another Best Actor award that he couldn't even accept because he wasn't there because of COVID. I'm going to watch this, but I'm not watching it because it should be taken in any way seriously or credibly as giving awards to the best movies. I want to watch this because it's an absolute hot mess and it's going to be gas. But again, I'm going to let you finish Banshees of Inisherin. But On Cailín was one of the best movies of all year. And I'm going to go down with that ship. I can stand over that.